Generation Numb is something that we've been sensing, we've been all feeling the last little while, and everything that we've been researching and have been seeing in conversations with our customers about what is actually going on in the workforce has all led to something that to now has felt almost a little bit nameless.
The concept for Generation Numb emerged when we were doing some exploratory work with senior leaders in large organizations. We were looking into the data and found this incredible stat which showed that back in 2016, your average employee at a large organization would have undergone around 2 large-scale transformations. And if you take that same employee and fast forward to now, they'll have undergone 13 changes. Because we're working typically with leaders who are tasked with doing exactly that kind of change and enabling people around that change, we wanted to dive into kind of what's the context that these initiatives are landing in, and what do they therefore have to do differently in order to motivate their people and galvanize their people around their strategy.
And ultimately, we want to enable our people. We work with some of the world's largest leading organizations that all come at our doorstep with very similar requests. We're trying to move in this direction of change. And when you think about it through the concept of Generation Numb, you're going to need a new playbook. You're going to need a new way to activate your people, mobilize your people. And what we've tried to do in the white paper is really come up with a set of recommendations that practically, realistically, authentically help your people and enable them in the way that is going to move them in the way you want them to move.
So the paper is essentially in 2 halves, the malady and the remedy. So the malady sets out the rise of Generation Numb, what are the causes, the characteristics of it. And then in the second half, in the remedy, we look at, how can leaders respond to this? And what do we need to start doing differently to enable our people in the context of this shift in their workforce? So the malady breaks down into 3 core addressable characteristics. First, we look at how 10 years of chronic uncertainty and turbulence has created people who are in effectively self-preservation mode, who are becoming hardened against new demands on their resilience. Then we look at how there's increasing isolation in the workforce, which is caused by kind of all this digital saturation, 10 more years of digital saturation, but also, of course, this traumatic event we've had in COVID. And then you take all of that and you put it in the context of this constant, overwhelming noise of the kind of backdrop of a poly-crisis world, so noise around political polarization and economic instability and climate change, and it all seems like a lot when you look at it that way. All of that, and over a prolonged, a sustained period, is taking people who are overwhelmed, and actually it's gone on for so long now that they are just becoming numb to it all.
And that's really the core concept of Generation Numb when you think about it, is that when you're working with people who are hardened, who are simultaneously overwhelmed as they are underwhelmed, you can't reasonably expect that any sort of legacy approach or the way that you used to approach your people is going to work today. And so you need to tailor your approach. You need to figure out what's really going on with your people. Where is numbness? How does numbness show up with my particular team? And what are we going to do about it? How are we going to truly mobilize people? How are we going to get people to feel something at work? That's what Generation Numb is all about. Well, I think the most important thing is recognize that people don't want to feel numb. They actually want to feel something at work, whether it's connection, whether it's about a sense of purpose, whether it's about being connected to the work. I think we remember that work could actually be energetic, and it can be exciting, and it can be filled with purpose. And it's just about reconnecting to that. I think that's the most important thing.
I think in some ways it's easy to almost fail to notice how much of our identity and our sense of self at work has dropped off as a result of the pandemic. Josh actually sent me a quote which really resonated with me. The best moments of our lives are not ones where we are passive or receptive or relaxed. They're ones where we're pushed to our limits. I think that's absolutely true. And I think that does tell you something about the way that people want to show up at work. It's not going to take much to really tap into that. So there's a real opportunity to just find these small pockets where a little bit more humanity can be injected into the way we engage with our people that will really help them to develop more resilience in the face of all of this change and upheaval, because that's not going away.